Hi, and welcome back to another Evolve to Win show. This is episode 101. And not only is it Happy New Year,
it's Happy
the first
birthday
episode of the new year, but it is my birthday today, J6. It's funny, I've met a few people that have my same birthday. Actually, Dave, your cousin, has our birthday, and I just found out somebody else did as well, but yeah. I guess that's not so uncommon to find out that there's so many other people that have your same birthday, but it's always fun to find out, find somebody new that you didn't know that have your birthday to get to celebrate. It's been a great day, and it's been a great day so far because it's really the only day of the year that my wife actually pays attention to me.
Right.
And doesn't give me a hard time at all and doesn't question anything that I do and all that. So it's very special for me.
It's a good day for you today. He lives for this day.
But we have a great topic for you today. And this comes from, well, I'll let Heather tell you a little bit about it. It's from one of our exchange students and his family.
So you don't really know the people that you think that you know the best. This is a story that we just learned from very dear friends of ours. And we want to share this story with you to help you see why you might think that you know people better than you do, including those closest to you and your family. So back in 1982, I had a foreign exchange student.
Okay.
Yeah. We were like, what? Where are we going with this? I had a foreign exchange student that my parents brought to our home from the Netherlands. Her name was Marlene. And Marlene stayed with us for a summer that first year, I believe. And so she really became my Dutch sister. We got to know each other very well, or so we thought, right? Yeah. And over the years, we've always stayed in touch. And in fact, if you've been following us, you may have even seen her son, Justin, on one of our podcasts. So Justin, when he stayed with us this last summer, he went through and did an internship in our business, and he worked with us. He helped us on performance aspects, right? Because he's in school for theater.
Yeah, and with technology. There is, I'm telling you, if you have a business and or you can't figure technology out, bring in somebody who's like in their early 20s. Yeah. That's somewhat technical. They know everything.
He just figure it out. It's like intuitive for him.
And I thought I knew a lot, but I mean, how
good.
Quickly he could just buzz through everything, search for stuff, and get it all in place. It was amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, he was a huge help for us in our business, and hopefully you saw him. He actually had a really, really highly viewed and liked podcast because he's just such a great kid. In any event, Justin, while he was here as part of his internship, we got him certified in the assessments, some of the assessments that we provide to our clients. So he got certified in both DISC and in driving forces. So
driving forces being motivators, so
right?
Hidden motivators.
Yeah, DISC. If you've never taken a DISC before, most people have at least heard of this, or even taken like some maybe unvalidated internet test where it's just a 4-part test, right? And it talks to you about your behavioral style, how you show up for other people, and it also, if you actually take a real assessment that's validated, it really will help you understand your communication preferences and how you maybe differ from others, okay? So that's one of the certifications that Justin got. Now, the other thing that he got certified in was driving forces. As Paul said, that's also known as motivators. That's a science that is very different from DISC. So if DISC is how you show up, how you behave, motivators or driving forces are beneath the surface. They're hidden from our view. So it's not something that you would know about somebody unless you knew because they took this assessment. It tells us why people do what they do, right?
Right.
So this is how you show up. Motivators or driving forces is why you do what you do. Mm-hmm. So here's what we created over the holidays for this amazing family. So there are 5 people in Marlene's family, Marlene and her husband Franz, and then they've got 3 children. And they're all, I think the youngest is 17. I think 17.
We'll go with 17.
Yeah, I think she's 17. So basically they're older children, right? Young adults. And we gave them as a Christmas present a DISC and driving forces assessment. So each one in the family got an assessment from us, and what was going to happen is Justin, because he's certified, when they went on their family holiday, they went to Cuba and they were doing a technology-free holiday.
Which isn't difficult to do because
we were in Cuba. We took
a cruise there, and in Cuba there really is no technology there. I mean, it truly is. There's no Wi-Fi, very little Wi-Fi. If you,
Yeah, I think
we didn't,
you
our phones didn't
actually-
work. Nothing would.
I don't even know if you could go to an internet cafe there. I think they probably had some internet cafes.
Yeah,
but in
it's
any
crazy,
event,
though.
they put their phones away, they put their tablets away, they put their computers away for this family trip.
Mm-hmm.
And the focus of the family trip was understanding each other better and really getting to know each other based on the assessment results that they had for DISC and for driving forces. So here's what's so cool. Justin took the time and he studied each one of the reports as they came out, and he really got to know each of the family members, and he basically presented an individual debrief for each person, but that others in the family got to be part of. So what was so cool is that they were really blown away by how much they learned about each other. Things that they didn't know started to make sense for them.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and what we did too is, did you say that we did give them a team report?
Well,
as well?
I haven't told that part
okay.
yet, but
Sorry.
yes, they took the discs, and the gift that we got them was doing a family report. So this is what we do for a living. Like, this is our expertise in business. When we work with teams, leadership teams, management teams, we use this technology to help people know each other better, to help them communicate better together. And we've had a lot of our clients ask if they could get assessments for their spouse or for their children. And so we've always done that just as a value add for our clients, but we've never really offered the service of doing this for families. But this is, now that we've got Justin certified, Bailey's certified, we've got 5 people in our company right now certified, Dale certified. It's probably something we should start doing because it's such an amazing experience. So what happens is Justin does all these individual debriefs, and I get an email from Marlene as soon as they got back home and back online, and she said we spent 4 afternoons of this family trip just getting to know each other with all these assessment results. I mean, imagine this. When is the last time you've had a family vacation with your teenage or young adult children where they're not on their cell phones the entire time, but instead you're having family communication sessions, right? But it wasn't something, I mean, if you could hear her email, she said they had so much fun learning about each other. She said it was better than any game that they brought. They said that they started to make jokes with each other about their different styles. You start to understand why previous arguments or times when you just struggled with each other were only because of the differences, the distinctions in your styles. And we all have it, we all do it differently. You hear sometimes like, oh, I got this trait from my father, or I've got this trait from my grandmother. And the reality is you may have a similarity in style with those people, but the traits that you have, you develop, at a very, very young age. And they're truly yours, right? They are yours and not someone else's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did that. Now the team report, which is really the family report, that was the gift that we gave them. So we said, okay, go on your trip, do all of this work. Justin can do all the debriefing and share with you everything that he's learned. But then when you come home, Paul and I are going to do a family debrief with you. And we created this team report. So they've got all of their family plotted on a graph. You're over here and you're over here and you're over here. And we're going to tell them exactly what that means and how that should show up for them and why. We're going to talk to them about their strengths, their potential limitations, the places where they are very, very likely to disagree or where they won't see eye to eye. Because it's not only how they show up and how they communicate, right? Are you fast-paced or are you a slower paced? Are you very much a people person or are you more focused on tasks and getting things done? Once they really start to understand that, and then they couple that with the underlying motivators of why you do what you do, I'm telling you, it's filled with laughter. And I think a lot of times the reason people just go to the place of laughing is because they can't believe that we've finally kind of helped them put together and shown them a model for why they do what they do and why sometimes they really struggle internally, right?
Yeah, and I think with families, there's no doubt all of us have come from families. And we've had conflicts with certain, whether it's our father or our mother, there's certain conflicts that we have, and usually you struggle more with one than another. So think about it for yourself. Did you? A lot of times we just say that it's just because of personalities, right? Just, or the way that somebody's being disciplined, but a lot of times if you look at it, it has to do with behavioral styles. A lot of times when behavioral styles are matching with a father and a son, they're going to butt heads in a lot of cases.
Yeah. And you would think that when you're really similar, you would get along the best together.
Right.
And that certainly can happen. You've heard the birds of a feather flock together.
Right.
Like, that's true. But you're right. Especially when there's strength in the style. So you gave the father and son example. If they're really similar, especially if there are extremes in the behaviors, they might react to each other, because what happens is when you get really frustrated by someone, sometimes it's because you see something in them that you don't like about yourself. So you're not even reacting to that person. You're reacting about something that you're not comfortable with in yourself. So it's just amazing to see all this. Because we've been studying this for so many years, when you get to a place of something so well because you've spent thousands of hours on it, I sometimes forget that people don't have this depth of awareness about who they are. And I even saw it time and time again over the holidays with all the different people that we got to interact with and friends we haven't seen in a while, where they shared something that was going on in their world. And for me, it was just crystal clear that's just how you're wired, but you don't understand it, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm doing is I'm going to give some gifts away. Not all my friends know this yet, but I'm going to be giving some gifts for 50th birthdays this year, where I have some of my friends take these assessments, and I'll debrief them and help them to understand why.
So the point of this is, in why we're talking about Marlene's family and Justin's family, and the way that the family did this on their own, went to Cuba, had their assessments, and then were debriefing each other and then having a laugh about it, is because you would think that they're a family. They know each other. Like, they know each other the best that anybody would know each other, correct? Right? Like, you would think so.
You'd think so.
And
I think that's probably a false belief that most everybody has. They really believe they know their spouse really well. They really believe they know their parents, their siblings, their children. And in fact, you really don't, because you see it through your filter, right?
Yeah, and maybe it's just these little nuggets that you pick up that fill in the gaps of, like, I always thought that about you, but I didn't really. And then you're able to put some data and, the pages, putting it in color to be able to see it and be like,
visual.
the
visual.
I totally see it now. And then you can start talking about situations, about when something happened, and maybe when you had an argument, or maybe when things didn't go the right way, or maybe when it went great, why that happened. And you can relate it back to that information, that data, which is really cool. So
I want to give an example of that too,
Okay.
because, like, just to put some real practicality on it, is that you may know, like, I may know that Paul can be critical or picky, right? Like, I may have known that before he ever took an assessment. And yet, when I see this behavior because of the assessment and the learning I've done, I actually understand why that happens, so that I don't have to take it personally, right? I understand that is what happens with your behavioral style when you're under some stress, pressure, fatigue. So that if you show up as picky or fussy or hard to please in some way, I used to make that mean, like, oh, nothing's good enough. And I would take that very personally, and I would be upset by it. And once I understood that that's just your style and it's what shows up for you when you're under pressure, now when I see that happen, I am able to sort of distance myself, to not take it personally, to just be aware that you are stressed out about something, or you're feeling some kind of pressure, and that this is a time for me to just figure out how I can support you, versus, my natural reaction back in the day would have been to, like, put the claws out, and then I would get aggressive and controlling and demanding, because that's what happens naturally with my behavioral style. And you can imagine that when you hear those words, you're like, ooh, I don't like that at all. And yet my behavioral style, when under stress, that's the tendency. And so what's really cool about understanding this, especially in a family, and let's draw the parallel too to the work family, right? Because this is where we spend most of the time, is working with people in teams. So in your family or in your work family, how often are other people in a place of stress, pressure, tension, or fatigue? And the answer is, especially within the last several years, as technology has continued to increase, I feel like the stress and the pressure has increased tremendously in the workplace. So whether it's your family or whether it's your work family, we do know that stress and tension rises. Over the holidays, stress and tension rises. They're supposed to be like fun and relaxing. It doesn't always happen that way, right?
Well, it's time at work. So they say, I was just reading some article and they were talking about 85% of the time a person is at work, they're on the phone, on emails, or in meetings. 85% of the time.
So you've got 15%.
So 15% of your time to
day.
figure out the rest of the time.
And that's just averages too.
Yeah,
There's some
totally.
way more than that, but yeah.
So there's a lot of stress going on. And the reason that we thought this would be an interesting topic is because when Heather and I started discussing a little bit, and we were saying, well, it's so cool that this family went off on a trip to Cuba and did this for themselves. And they learned so much about themselves. And we said, well, wow, they're a family that have lived with each other for 20 something years now. And they are finding things that are really interesting and filling in the gaps and learning about each other. Imagine, so when we started thinking again, we're like, well, imagine what happens in businesses. So you have teams, you have managers, you have teams where, maybe you've been working together for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you think you know each other, but you're not even close to this family over here that went to Cuba. You're just people that just know each other from work, and you put on your facades on how you're supposed to act at work. So imagine what you could learn about each other if you were using these assessments and using the debriefing tools and having these conversations to open up the lines of communication. So if you only have 15% of your day to communicate and to really start to build those relationships with people, especially if you're leading them, what a great way of doing that.
Yeah. And going to the next level, think about Justin again for a moment. So Justin just turned 21 years old, and he is now certified in these 2 assessments, which means he's done hours and hours worth of study to really understand himself and to understand others. So his level of awareness is increased tremendously. I mean, think about I think, oh my gosh, what would it have been like if I had that knowledge and that information at that age? So I'm so excited for him. He's already using this in his applications. He's looking at doing some consulting for different businesses in London, which is where he goes to school. And to be able to have this information at that age is extraordinary. So I want you to think about that too. I want you to think about your young adult children. How many of our friends' kids even out there right now are questioning what they should be doing? I'm not sure what career path to take. Or they're in a job right now where they're feeling less than satisfied in their job. Well, I would suggest to you, get some more information about a certification in these assessments to really, really help you understand your strengths, your limitations, and communication preferences. The knowledge that's available there is ridiculous. And I think that, the practical application of this is not just learning about me, learning about you, getting better at having an awareness to adapt my communication style for the best level of rapport. But let's face it, until you really understand you can't possibly understand what the right career fit would be. So we have clients who are getting certified just because they want the additional information, right? The additional knowledge. So it's an amazing
and
science.
Also, it's, especially for younger people in their 20s getting out of college. Like, first of all, this should be taught in grade school,
should be taught.
In junior high, in high school. It should be taught because what is it? The number one skill that everybody needs is the skill of being able to influence, be able to communicate, to be able to persuade, to be able to just build relationships with people. That's a skill, and a lot of people have it. So like, oh, this people person, my kid, they really know how to interact. They're great with people. Well, yeah, that's great because they have a behavioral style that's given them that natural ability to do that. But a lot of the rest of the population are just trying to figure it out on their own. And if they're not somebody that is an outgoing person, they're going to have a difficult time a lot of times if they don't know learning how to interact with people, learning how to build those relationships, learning how to say the right things and say the right things to the right people, so just in being able to read people. So there's just so many, this is above, I think, technical skills, because if you really understand how to motivate people, influence people, persuade people, understand people, and build relationships with people as a young person, imagine what you could do.
Talk about a competitive advantage for a young person, especially. I've been having conversations with people about the difference in generations, right? And how this younger generation, look, we can't even imagine what it was like to grow up with the technology that they have access to. But one thing we do know is that they're communicating in different ways now, and it's not always face to face, and it's definitely not on the phone, right? So having the ability to learn at a younger age these communication skills is just phenomenal. So you're right. I wish they would teach this in grade school and high school, anywhere.
And I don't really care how far the technology goes and where it goes in the future. It's always going to default back to face-to-face personal connections with people. Because I know with a lot of what we do on Skype and on Zoom, so we're communicating, on the computers with people. It's great. And it's awesome to see somebody's face, and it's great to be able to speak to them and to see them in real time, and it shows up and there's no lag or anything, but there's still nothing like being in front of a person. There's this connection that you have. There's the energy that you get from just being around a person, how you can tell, you can just feel energy off of a person, whether they're a good person or maybe they're having some issues or there's some challenges or whatever, but you can feel that through them. If you're a young person and you are trying to figure out how to communicate better, what is the advantage, what's the difference maker, it's always going to be around people and how you interact and build relationships with them.
Yeah.
Always.
So as if you take this back to the business scenario, in a leadership role, how are you helping your team to develop their communication skills? How are you helping your team to understand themselves better so that they can truly intentionally tap into their strengths? Most leaders really don't understand their teams well enough to do that unless you've done this type of work and you have assessments that will give you a much better look at who someone is and why they do what they do. Even after, so I first took the DISC in 2001 is the first time I studied that. So that's been 19 years now. And there are still times where I'm fooled by somebody's behavioral style, right? So when I actually see the assessment, there are nuances that I couldn't have observed without the assessment. So even if you're at an expert level, there are still times where people will put on a facade and you just won't know. So you think about this. I like to say it this way. At work, as Paul said, we all put on this facade, right? And part of this facade is it's not a bad thing, right? But it's how do I believe I need to behave to be successful in my role? So we adapt our natural behavior to be successful at work. So how do you know who somebody really is then? Because if we're adapting to our role, then you're not seeing who we really are. It's sort of like an actor. So imagine that my work was to be an actor and I was playing a role. Would you communicate with me as the role, or would you rather communicate with me for who I really am?
Who you really are.
And the answer is who I really am. But how would you know that? Because if we're at work, you just see who I am in the role. So that's part of what's really interesting about this whole conversation is how well do you actually think that you know the people who you think you know the best? And the answer is you don't know what you don't know. So if you want to learn more about the assessments or certification for assessments, you can feel free to reach out to us, leave us a comment, or reach out to us directly. And I would just suggest that you consider, if you haven't done this already, the most important thing about taking an assessment is that you are certain that the assessment is validated. Because if you take an assessment, like you can do online, you get free assessments everywhere. but they're only as good as the validation and the science behind it. So you might not be getting good data, and it would be very unfortunate to work from an assessment that isn't giving you good data. So please make sure that your assessment is certified. And we'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them. If you liked this episode, if you are intrigued by the idea of having a technology-free family vacation where you all get to know each other better. Some people are like, oh yeah, no, I'd rather be on my cell phone.
Unfortunately, you probably have to go to Cuba.
Right. Think about that as a goal for this year. If you haven't done one of those vacations, I mean, you and I have only ever done it for one night, and it was pretty extraordinary. But can you imagine an entire week? That's why I used to love going on cruises.
Yeah, that's right. They've ruined it now.
Yeah, right. So please join me in wishing Paul a happy birthday. And
Thank you
all, it's so great to be with you. Thanks for being with us today, and have an awesome start to your year.